So like always at GMATWhiz, we try to bring amazing and inspiring success stories to you guys, so you to understand how you can actually ace the GMAT. And today is one such day. This interview is happening very impromptu because Balaji, who's one of our students, has taken the GMAT just today, and we heard a good news from him that he scored a 760 on the GMAT. So heartily congratulations, Balaji. How does it feel like to see that amazing score of 760 flashing on your screen? How was the feeling?
Thank you so much, Piyush. Honestly, I was relieved. I was very exhausted, so it was quite a relief actually. So relief is the word I can think of. I felt quite relieved. Yeah.
And just to give you guys some bit of a context, Balaji had taken multiple attempts on the GMAT, and he had to travel also to take this attempt, is what I understand. Like he had to travel quite a bit, and I remember I got a call from Sunita ma'am, with whom Balaji was working, and she was like, Piyush, you know what? Balaji has got a 760 today, and he's so happy, so excited, and he's telling me, ma'am, is this real? I just want to make sure that my score will not change right after the scorecard has come in. So I was able to like kind of understand. And like again, I'm just giving some background. So when Balaji came to us in GMATWhiz, like at that point of time, he had already taken 3 attempts on the GMAT. March, April, May, like one attempt each of these months, and his score was 710, 700, 700. Like verbal score was 36, 34, 35. So it was stuck in that range for 3 months. Hard work, effort, all that went in. And he works at a rig. So obviously for 14 days, he's offshore completely. He's not able to study. Like those momentum breaks also happen. So for someone like him who is having a very hectic schedule, very difficult schedule to manage with studies, it's very difficult. And the feeling of getting relief from this test that you don't more have to sit and prepare for GMAT in itself is a very, very big thing. So yeah, thank you so much, Balaji, for like making this happen, and being an inspiration to a lot of students who feel that because of their hectic schedule or they have hit a score plateau, they cannot achieve more than this. So I'm very sure that this interview is going to be very inspiring to many, many people. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start with, when did you start your GMAT journey? How were your earlier attempts like? How long did you prepare for? What all did you use? Let's start from the scratch. Yeah.
Right. So I started my preparation somewhere around last September with another test prep company. So my
Okay.
plan was to take the GMAT around December or January. But like with my
Okay.
schedule, I used to have that momentum break again and again,
Oh,
again and again. So it took me around 3-4 months to just go through their modules and then like come together. So I thought, okay, another 1-2 months, maybe I'll be ready. I can take my mock. But that was not the case. Again, something or the other was happening, and then I couldn't take a proper attempt. So finally, after a lot of preparation and everything, I got around 700 in my practice test in the official mock.
okay.
And then
Okay.
I got the confidence, okay, now I think I can go and take my first attempt. And I took my first attempt in March. So that was a 710. And yes, of course, I was not happy with 710. I was happy, but I wanted to improve. Then I prepared more. So all of these 3 attempts I prepared on my own, March,
Okay.
April, and May. So, and it was 710, 700, 700. And honestly, I did not want to take another attempt. The third to fourth attempt, I did not want to do that. I was, okay, I'm done with this. I'm done with looking at that 700 again and again on the screen. So that's when I thought, okay, I should accept that maybe I need some kind of external help and then reach out. That's when I came to know about GMATWhiz verbal tutor program, and then I signed up for it.
Okay. So just to get it right, basically for the first 3 attempts, you used another online course basically, and you were studying from
Right.
their self-prep program, and
Yeah.
you hit a score plateau basically for those 2 attempts. So Balaji, again, just introspecting, like right now, I know like we had a discussion in May when you signed up after your wife also signed up.
Right.
So she's still yet to take the GMAT, and we are hopeful that we'll have another interview with her very soon as well. But like at that point of time, what was happening? Like like what do you think was the main reason why your score was not improving? You were putting in effort, like you prepared for 6 months for the first attempt, is what I understand, and then you had put in another like 2 months of effort for another 2 attempts. So what was the problem which was not letting your score improve? What do you think?
Yeah, I was struggling with it myself, but then after getting on a call with you, and then with the first after the first session with Sunita ma'am, she straight away told consistency is my issue. I was not consistent with the way I was applying the methods or the way I was approaching a question. In some question, I used to look at it in a different way, and another question another way. So that was what I was lacking, because the practice test I was taking in between these attempts, they were saying something else. I have gotten a 750 and a 760 in the official mocks also, but somehow on the test day I was not able to recreate that. It could have been so many things, but one thing I worked on was consistency. No matter what, how fast the clock is running, or no matter how tough the question is, I tried to stick to the basics. I tried and kept my process and the approach to the questions consistent.
So basically, the main thing which you felt was that the approach was not consistent. So consistency with
Right.
respect to using a standardized approach. So let's
That's
elaborate
correct.
on this particular aspect. That what is this exactly like? Because when you talk about consistency, most people think that consistency is about making sure that you solve questions, making sure that you solve questions in a specific way. But is that specific way is something very specific that you should be using, or is just any way which will work? Like what was the thought process in your case?
No, for example, I can think of a sentence correction. The first session when I solved the question, Sunita ma'am, again, she pointed out something. In certain questions, I wasn't reading the whole sentence. When I feel like,
Okay.
okay, I'm getting the meaning from the sentence, I used to not read through, not maybe pay attention to the rest of the sentence. In some questions, I would. In some questions, I would directly look at the options and then do a 3-2 split and then do. So my approach
Okay.
was quite haphazard in a way.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
had to streamline all of that.
So it was mix of basically everything. Like you're using splits in some
Yes,
cases, you're thinking about the meaning. In
right.
some cases, you're thinking about meaning. In some instances, and not. Okay. So what did you eventually boil down to? Like you used 2, 3 things, but what do you recommend people to use if they want to improve their sentence correction?
Sentence correction, especially before jumping onto the options, like you can glance at the options, like look at a split, and then get the intended meaning correctly. Like I think even you, I got on a call with you to discuss strategy. You told spend 70-30, 70% of the time in the question and 30% analyzing the options. You looked at my ASR and then you told maybe I'm spending a lot of time in the options and not with the argument. So I could see that the more and more, once I understand the argument and then I went to the options, I was not getting confused between the answers. I was able to at least eliminate my way to the correct answers without wandering here and there. So that helps. Spend more time with the question. Make sure that you understand what it is, and then dive into the options. Because many a times it used to happen. I understand it half baked, and then I go into the options, and then it's all a loop. So I'm running up down up down. So
You're
I
running
didn't do
up,
that
down,
this time.
time is clock is running, and you
Right.
end up marking a
Right.
random
It is
answer.
very counterintuitive to think like that, to spend as much time as possible with the passage or with the question, but it actually works. This time I did not look at the clock because I was like, if I look at the clock, I know it will mess up with my approach. So I spend time with the passage, spend time with the argument. It is counterintuitive, but with the practice test, I saw it actually helps you. It brings down the time, it increases your accuracy. So that's what worked.
A very, very critical point. So honestly, what I told you is something I tell to a lot of people that you should give out 70% of the time to the question,
Right.
30% of the time to the
Right.
options. But not all people follow it. And the reason I want you to tell it out loud is because you have achieved something which is very, very difficult to achieve. Like most people hit a score plateau and they don't kind of improve from there. You have improved your score like in 2 months, around close to 10 points. Like last verbal score was 35, and now you have
Right.
improved it to verbal 44, which is an amazing score. So people right now who will be watching this video later will actually pay more attention to what you're telling, not me. So, so that's why when it comes from the horse's mouth, they are able to relate to things better. So let's go in depth of
Right.
basically how you went about. So we understood in summarized fashion that the main thing that changed was your approach and the
Right.
consistency with the approach. That you made
Right.
sure that you're spending more time on the question stem, understanding it so that you're not doing back and forth between the question and the options again and again. And second, you ensure that you're consistently using the same approach over and over again without worrying about time. That's another factor,
That's
basically,
correct.
right?
Yes.
So that's a summarized view of what changed with in your thought process when you started working with GMATWhiz. But let's break down this approximately 2 months of effort. Like I think you joined us around 16th of May, and this today is or 15th
Yeah.
of July. So it's exactly 2 months actually. So how did this 2 months go? Like where did you start, focus your effort first? What did you start with? Let's start from the very basics, like so that anyone else who is struggling with verbal and their score is also around in the, let's say, mid 30s or low 30s, they can also understand how to improve it to a verbal 40 plus, basically. So let's start with the basic, like how were your first 10-15 days, like how did they look like, what did you do? Yeah.
Okay, so my first session with Sunita ma'am, it was a diagnostic session. Like she asked me to solve a sentence correction question, and then she saw my approach. Like I told you, she was able to diagnose that okay, maybe I'm not following the approach properly. The way I'm applying the approach to the questions, it's all haphazard. It all depends. on the question and the answer. So that is when we streamline. And also, I understood there is a lot of depth involved in understanding the intended meaning. Honestly, when I signed up for the course, I thought, hey, come on, I've been preparing for 8 months now. What more can I learn from this? There is nothing more to learn. But then I had tried everything, and then I was still not able to cross that V35. So it was my last attempt. I was like, okay, let me see what can I gain from this. So that's what happened. So the way she taught things, I understood there is a lot of depth to it, especially sentence correction. So that helped me slowly. Slowly, I started picking up the methods from her. How deeply you have to understand a sentence. Sometimes even an article like the, right, the,
Hmm.
or it can be
Hmm.
placed somewhere in the options, and that can help you cross off an answer choice. I generally don't see all of that because it used to skip my eyes. I even asked her, how do you even notice all of this? But then with practice, it slowly came, and that helped me eliminate my way to the answer. So eventually, you have to get to the correct answer, right? So eliminate your way to the answer. All of these small pointers help. So we started with sentence correction, and we worked our way through that.
Okay. And Balaji, from the points that you made, I am getting a feeling, so I just want to validate it from you, that you also went through the sentence correction module of GMATWhiz online course to a great degree.
Right,
Is that
yes,
right? Right?
yep,
Okay. Because
yes,
I was getting a
everything.
feeling, because when you said that you had already tried a lot of things and you probably felt that you might not have to start from scratch again. You had a feeling, but
Mm-hmm.
you still came with an open mind. And this is a very, very critical thing, guys. Understand, like I speak to people, Balaji, who have scored just, let's say, 600 or 620 on the test, and even there are people who have scored 550 on the test, and they come and tell me, Piyush, you know what, I know all the concepts, I just need practice questions. Basically, I just need practice questions. Give me practice questions, I'll improve. And I tell them that that's not how it works. If your approach is
Right.
wrong, you cannot fix your approach by just taking more questions. Then you will be still using the wrong approach. And we have
Right.
Balaji sitting in front of us who has scored a 700 3 times, still was open to the idea of going to the coursework. Now, again, please understand that we don't ask students to go through everything. And I'm pretty sure that Sunita ma'am will also personalize some areas in sentence correction or CR or RC, depending on where the weaknesses and strength of a student lies. But if it is required to go through a module, go through a module. Because as Balaji said, intended meaning is not just about, okay, reading the sentence from a meaning standpoint. You have multiple steps involved in it, and you have to achieve expertise in each step. Innocuous thing like an article can actually change the meaning significantly, so you cannot ignore
Right.
that, right? So that's something which is important. So SC is what you started with. You worked on the module, you learned a lot of from there, and you also worked with Smita ma'am. The first session was the diagnostics to understand where you're wrong, and then an action plan was created basically based on that, and you followed that action plan. So how much time did you spend on sentence correction? Roughly, again, I know you would not have written it down anywhere, but yeah, roughly, just to get an idea.
Yeah. Somewhere around 3 sessions. So that will be around, time as in with
Time,
Sunita
yeah.
ma'am, or
In terms of number of days of prep, like basically, yeah.
somewhere around 2 weeks. 2 weeks with the
Two
module,
weeks.
one to
Okay.
1.5, maybe 1.5, less than 2 weeks. I'm still not sure. But
Yeah,
then sentence correction, it
approximately.
was like
Yeah.
a continuous process. Like
Yeah.
she made sure that I practiced like 2 to 3 questions every day. So
Okay.
it was more, the focus was on applying the process and then seeing if you get it right. The time was not at all there. Only in the, I think the last 2 to 3 weeks, we started looking at the time factor of solving, time factor of like how quickly you are able to solve, or how much more time it takes. So till then, we never looked at time. It was all, the focus was all on accuracy and the method and the approach. That's all.
That's another very, very critical point. Like many people start thinking about timing from day one. And if you got this, heard this right,
Right.
Balaji just mentioned that out of 8 weeks of preparation, about 2 months, first 6 weeks he was not thinking about timing, like, or almost like 75% of his prep he was not thinking about timing, he was thinking about the approach. Last 25% of the time, the last 2 weeks was sufficient to improve the timing, improve his score to a verbal 44. And that's what is very, very critical. You cannot get your timing right unless your approach is fixed. Okay, so that's very
Right.
important. Okay, so 2 weeks you focused on SC, and I understand that SC thing evolved over a period of time. It's not like just it ended in this 2 weeks. And the reason why we mostly start with SC, and I'm pretty sure that you would have also realized this, that generally SC has just one sentence to worry about. Like you just have to read one sentence, understand it better, and that's something which actually helps you in doing CR and RC, because then there are multiple sentences that you have to deal with over there. So, like, did you feel that impact coming in CR and RC, Balaji, like after moving from SC to CR? Like,
Yes,
did you feel
actually,
that
I
impact?
had to move away little from the sentence correction approach when I went to CR, because I was looking at it too minutely, like I was doing sentence correction, which was not required in CR. But it was nice to have that kind of a practice. I used to look at a modifier and automatically look for the modifying entity. So I
Right.
used to look at a pronoun and then like trace it back. Okay, what does it refer to? So it was at the back of my mind. It was like warm up. Even when I was
Ha.
doing critical reasoning, it helped. It helped. Yes.
In fact, when I speak to students, I always tell them that in SC and CR, your reading style remains the same. The only difference basically is that in SC, you will question the logic also. That, okay, this is the modifier, this is the modified entity. Are they making sense with each other? In a CR or RC question, you would need to still identify that. The reason for identification is different, I'll tell you that. But you will not question the logic. That, okay, whether this modification is logical. You will rather question the line
Right.
of reasoning, basically. So it's a very, very valid point that you made, that sometimes people think of CR and RC in that minute level also. So don't make that mistake of like thinking about grammar in CR and RC,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
focus on the modifier and modified entity also, because it helps you to break down sentences and understand the crux. Because GMAT typically does this, especially in RC, that they will confuse you by adding a lot of additional information in between the sentence, filling it up and keeping the main part of the sentence somewhere else. And if you don't identify the modifier and modified entity at the back of your mind, you will actually get stuck with those detail unnecessarily and miss out the main part, basically. So that's very, very important that you talked about, Balaji. So you moved to CR after that, right? After SC.
Yeah.
Okay. What changed in CR? Like, what was the change in your thought process for CR?
Yeah. In CR, I realized my approach was very mechanical. In the sense, I would look at an argument, identify the conclusion, falsify, try and find instances. I tried that, but that somehow did not work for me. I understood in it actually comes intuitively to you in CR. The logical gaps, when you read it, like when you read an argument, like you want to disagree with the person who is like giving the argument, you see that the logical gaps automatically pop up, and the
Okay.
frameworks in the GMATWhiz module also it helped. So it helped me like fit into a template. Okay, I see this is the cause, and I can automatically see what are the possible assumptions could be, right? So it helped me like fit most of the arguments or the OG questions also into a template, and that helped me deal with the questions there. So basically, I wasn't more mechanical with the approach. I was more organic with the way I was solving CR, like looking at an argument like it is and trying to refute the argument. So when I was reading it from that kind of an angle, I could see the logical gaps. It was quite easy. It was quite intuitively coming to me.
Balaji, you have actually talked about a lot of aspects, but I would just want to kind of detail them out for students, because again, you can
Right.
understand it, but people who are still stuck in a school, I just want
Right.
to just draw a simpler way of putting this across. So there are two things which Balaji focused on. Number one, you should not do CR mechanically, in the sense that many people think, okay, negating or falsifying the argument is the conclusion is the easiest way to identify a assumption. That's a lot. That's what a lot of
Right.
courses teach. Like, I'm not taking the name of
Right.
the course which Balaji used, but I know which course he used. So that's another method that they use. So a lot of people think that this is the best way of possibly doing it. But there are two problems with this. Number one, sometimes you're not focusing a lot on the line of reasoning which is there. Second is that you are using a trick or a shortcut, like, but in reality this ends up taking a lot more time, because you have to falsify all the option choices in that case. So that takes up a lot of time of yours. So what Balaji did was, instead of focusing on that mechanical process, he started looking at a more logical angle, that okay, let me understand the line of reasoning. And a very important point that he said was that he tried to place himself against the author, that whatever the author is saying, I have to argue against it, that okay, is this making
Right.
sense or not, right? So again, like probably you can take an example, Balaji, and explain it. I was about to take an example, so can you take an example and explain this part to users?
Sure. Say if a friend of mine is running a business and then he says, okay, he's going to increase the price of a commodity and then he's expecting to see an increase in profits. If he's my friend, I would say, yeah, maybe. But then when it is not my friend, when I want to refute that argument, I would look at it more critically and think, hey, you're increasing the price of a commodity and you're assuming that, okay, people will keep on buying that many number of commodity or a number of items, right? And that would in fact result in the profit increase, which you are thinking, which might not happen. So that is the
True.
logical gap that becomes evident when you start looking at it critically. Like place the argument against you and then like try, maybe imagine like that argument is coming from somebody who you don't like and you really want to find
So
loopholes
sort
or
of some
flaws in that.
role play, basically, you have to do,
Sort of, yes.
basically, that.
Right, right. That helped me
And
initially, and then it started coming intuitively. It was more natural later. Yeah.
that's very important. Like, if it initially you have to force yourself to do it, and then your subconscious mind takes over. And just one more thing which I would like to add here is that if you focus, like Balaji talked about one part, one fact, and then another fact, and the moment that second fact came, he started questioning it. And this is how you should read CR arguments. Generally, you will see that there are multiple facts presented and then there is a conclusion. And most people, what they do is they read the entire argument in one go and then start refuting things. Don't ever do that. Just as Balaji said, you need to imagine someone is putting a dialogue against you. So they have presented two facts. The moment you see those two facts, you ask yourself, are these two facts matching up? Basically, are they not? And that's how you should think. You should not think after reading the entire argument. You should think as you read the argument. That's something which is very, very essential for you to get the CR questions correct. The second point which you made, again, I'm just trying to put it across like to users, that there are certain frameworks which are tested on GMAT: plan and goal, cause and effect. So Balaji talked about cause and effect, for example. There's a comparison framework, there's a point-based framework which you teach in GMATWhiz. Now, these frameworks help you to pre-think, like this arguments which are there. If you put things into this frameworks, it makes your life easy to think around those. Let's say like player devil's advocate role better in a way. So argue against what is there. So those things helped in critical reasoning. Okay, so approximately how much time on critical reasoning? Like 2 weeks on SC, and then how much time on critical reasoning?
I spent the maximum time on critical reasoning, I remember, because I wasn't making good enough progress. I could see that my critical reasoning was the weakest. So before I could proceed with the modules, Sunita ma'am, she asked me to like slow down, take some 600 to 650, 650, 700 level questions, and make sure that I get my accuracy up and then proceed with the modules. So there I took some time and then I proceeded with the modules. So I took the maximum time in CR, maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks, yeah.
And that's another important aspect. That's another important aspect that like all the users who are watching this later, they need to understand is that everyone's strengths and weaknesses are different. Just because you're at a certain verbal score and the same verbal score like is with another student doesn't mean that your action plans will exactly be the same. So Balaji mentioned that he had to work a lot on CR. We worked with another student who improved his score from 34 to a 41 in about 20 days. For him, SC was his strongest suit, but we still made him work maximum sentence correction. Because again, there he had most of the flaws and it took him time to get used to that. So it is important that you identify your strengths and weaknesses and devote like proper time to everything in that sense. So I'm assuming, Balaji, that now you have spent almost 5, like not now, but yeah, the SC and CR you have spent almost 5 weeks of effort. So does that mean that you only worked on RC for a week? Like that's what happened basically?
No. Actually, when I started out, I was quite confident in my RC less than a week, I think. So after that, it was all putting everything together and then practicing it all, getting my accuracy up, and then taking a consolidated quiz to check how my timing is.
Okay, got it. So basically for RC, you spent less than a week's time. So did you change anything in RC also, like any part of your
Yes, because I found the GMATWhiz's RC's passages were very good. Even I used to rant to Sunita ma'am how tough it is to do the answer choice elimination in RC and GMATWhiz. Because I used to do OG passages quite well, because I understand in OG you read the passage well, answer choice elimination is easy. But in GMAT you have to do that extra step of looking at the answer choice also very critically and then like seeing the minor changes. And I felt the passages were also sourced very well. So it was quite GMAT-like. So RC, it helped me maintain the level I had. And then I think it improved also. I think RC might have been a game changer.
We might ask you to order the ESR, but we'll talk about that later. I just want to see, like, generally, I have not looked at a verbal 44 ESR till date, basically. I've looked at the maximum is 42 because, again, people who get 40 plus don't order the ESR. As simple as that. There's no reason they will order the ESR. But let's see.
No, I really want to get an ESR now to see what went right in this time, because I'm so used to seeing a V35, V36. This is a happy surprise. I was expecting, I knew I could maybe somewhere touch around, tease around V40, V41, but the 44 is good. I'll take that.
No, definitely. Just off, like, it's on the record also now, but ma'am was talking to me since last week and she was saying that I'm expecting Balaji to hit 750, 760 minimum. Like that was her thought process. So she was saying that he's picking up things really well and he's in the right shape. And I think your mock scores were also aligned with the GMAT, right? Like which mocks did you take in the last 2 weeks, basically, overall?
I had already exhausted all my 6 official mocks in my 3 attempts. So I took I reset my 5 and 6 and then I retook the 5th one again. So, and then I took all GMATWhiz mocks.
Okay, and what was your score in the GMATWhiz mocks basically?
GMATWhiz mocks, the last 3 was, I started with the 730, then a 760, then a 750. The fourth mock didn't quite go well. So it was 2 days before, it was day before yesterday. I got a
Okay.
720 there. So I was
Okay.
totally shattered. So anyway, I went to the exam without any expectation. Maybe that could have helped me. So that 720 was
Yes.
because of some time management, and then I rushed through in the last, and then I got the last block completely wrong. So that
Okay.
pulled my score down. So
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 if
it was
you take that
730,
720
760,
out, it
50, and
was
20. Yeah,
730, 750, 760. Basically very similar to,
that's
and
correct.
what was the score in the
Right.
fifth mock that you retook?
That I got a 770.
770. Okay. So some bit of bias
Yeah,
would also be there because of a
of
few
course.
questions
Yes,
here and
there was quite, yeah, that was there.
but like the recent mocks were all, most of them were in line with basically what you were getting.
Right.
Great,
Yes.
great, great. So any tips for the last 2 weeks? Like we've not talked a lot about the last 2 weeks. So what was your strategy in the last 2 weeks? So we understand broadly that in the first 6 weeks you worked on your methods. Last 2 weeks were more focused around timing. But how did you improve your timing in the last 2 weeks? Like was there anything special that you did?
Actually, I didn't have to do anything to improve my timing. I made peace with the
Okay.
fact that, hey, come on, I'll be taking somewhere around 2 minutes or something per question, and then I'm okay not solving the last three, four questions. And also, I have to thank you for your webinar. I think 2 weeks before you put out a webinar where you talked in detail about the pacing that you have to follow and how you have to follow a pacing and then maybe leave the last block to whatever it is. Because in my last three attempts, I noticed one thing. In retrospect, I realized halfway through the exam, I used to glance at the clock and then see that I'm falling short by 4 5 minutes, change something, maybe do two, three questions faster, and then finish
Faster.
the exam. But yeah, but this time I glanced at the clock. I didn't give a damn. I was like, I'm okay leaving the last three, four questions. I'll guess
Right.
that. But to my surprise, I was able to pace quite well. Even in the GMATWhiz mock, I was able to pace quite well. I had a mental clock. I knew if I was like spending disproportionately large amount of time in one question, I knew that I just should not do that. I should let go of a question, but then just be in my natural game. So pacing somehow worked out for me. Just follow the process and the pacing falls in place. And it's okay, I think. You spend 2 minutes per question, and if your accuracy is taken care of, leave the last three questions, pick your favorite alphabets, and then I think things should work out.
So that,
Yeah,
that makes sense. In fact, the answer that you gave, I'm really impressed with that answer, that I did not have to do anything about timing. That's how timing
right,
improves. And I've told
right,
so many times to people that there's nothing you can do about timing. The only thing you can do is improve your process, and timing naturally follows. So that's the best
right.
possible way possibly to answer that question. And it's so glad to hear those thoughts because again, I strongly believe in this. I tell this to all the students, but when I see someone implementing it and actually getting to their dream score, there's nothing like it, honestly. So really, really glad around that. So please make sure, guys, you take these pointers from Balaji, that like last block, when I say last block of what Balaji meant was last 3 4 questions are not as critical as the first few questions, like first 3 quarters, or let's say four last like 3 4 questions before the last block, basically. So what you need to do is you should not be cutting time on those middle questions or starting questions. Like I'm not saying, or we are not advocating that you should put extra effort on first 3 quarters. You should just put the effort that is needed for them. Don't cut time
Right.
and be tension free. That's what Balaji did. He did not fall short of time because of that, because he's not giving any part of his mental capacity or any brain share to the clock. He's utilizing all of that on the question at hand, and that's when you're able to do it in the fastest possible. So it's very critical for anyone to kind of achieve that score. Great. So any closing tips for students, Balaji? Like
Tips, I would definitely ask them to go back to that particular webinar of yours. Maybe you can link it down and
sure,
watch it. It
sure.
really helped me. So that was a major shift I did. Not think about the clock. And when you see a question, when you see a tough question midway, it is your cue that, okay, maybe you're doing good. Don't be lazy and skip it. Work your way
Yeah.
through, because my attempt was very similar to yours. Somewhere around 20 to 22, I got a huge passage, a very dense passage. And I remembered, okay, I should not, I have to give my all here. So I think that might have changed something, because that helped. And then I could clearly see that I was getting tougher questions in the last block. I was getting a bit uncomfortable. It was not a great feeling during the exam, but maybe in retrospect, I feel like, okay, that could have changed it, that particular RC passage.
I'll always
So if
trade
I
that
would
off
have
for
done
easier
it,
questions. Yeah.
yeah, if I would have done it like my last three attempts, I would have sped through that passage, or like half-heartedly done that passage, which you should not do. Should like leave the last block like that and
That's
then pace. naturally.
That's very, very important. And I'm happy that
Right.
you were able, you were also in a similar situation and you managed that pressure really, really well. So
Right.
that's another thing. And I always say that GMAT is as much about your capability and talent as much it is about your ability to handle that anxiety, stress, pressure of the test as well. So really, really great tips, Balaji. This video was really helpful, and I'm very sure that a lot of people are going to take inspiration from this, because verbal, you already know, you know a lot of people who have faced issues with verbal, you have experienced it yourself. People hit a score plateau, but don't just like be bogged down because you're not able to cross a score. Try to understand what's the key reason behind that. If you are someone who is a logical person and if you can identify those key reasons, trust me, no one can actually stop you from improving your score. And Balaji is a living example. He has improved the score 2 months, almost 10 points. In the previous 2 months, there was no improvement at all. So you can always do that if you get to the right, you can identify the right root cause and also the right solution for the root cause. So thank you so much, Balaji, for taking out time today. We wanted to do this
Pleasure.
interview today itself because it's everything is fresh in your mind. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piyush.